Welcome, everyone, to SI Media with Jimmy Traina. Thank you so much for listening. Hope you're all doing well. We have a fantastic episode. First time on the SI Media with Jimmy Traina podcast for Jay Bilas from ESPN, of course, college basketball analyst, I should say, and he was outstanding. We get into a lot of the state of college basketball, and then in the last half, get into Jay's broadcasting career, and he had some amazing stories about Bill Raftery, Larry David, and a couple other things. So stay with the Jay Bilas interview for some really great stuff. Like I said, on Raftery and Larry David. Sal not here this week. If you listened last week, you know Sal is in Disney with his family. So he is not here for the Traina Thoughts segment. I called on my friend and former SI colleague, and he's a mogul in the track and field and running world. Chris Chavez from Citius Mag joins me for the Traina Thoughts segment. Get into a lot of pop culture stuff with Chris, reminisce a little bit about our SI days, and talk about the Yankees with the facial hair nonsense and a couple of other things there. So there is a Traina Thoughts segment. Sal's back next week after his Disney trip, and then he's getting his cataract surgery, which we went into last week if you missed it. All right. And also, quick reminder, if you missed any recent episodes, go in the archives, check them out. Andrew Marchand from The Athletic was on last week. Dan Rappaport from Dan on Golf and Scratch was on 2 weeks ago. So check those out. Subscribe to SI Media with Jimmy Traina. Leave a review on Apple. Rate the podcast as well, and all that good stuff. All right. Great episode for you. Jay Bilas from ESPN, followed by Traina Thoughts with my buddy Chris Chavez filling in for Sal Licata. All right here, right now on SI Media with Jimmy Traina. All right, joining me now. Very excited. First time. I don't know how that's possible. But first time for me here on SI Media with Jimmy Traina is one of the top college basketball voices in the land from ESPN, Jay Bilas. Jay, thanks for coming on. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
No, my pleasure. I can't believe I have not had you on sooner. It's pretty ridiculous. And then I mean, it's crazy to me. You've been at ESPN since 95?
Yeah, I'm an old man. It's scary.
Doesn't feel that. I mean, you're one of these voices that, this time of the year, you're synonymous. There are certain people, Vital, Raftery, yourself, who are just synonymous with as soon as that calendar turns to this time of the year. And but even I was taken aback to see 30 years at ESPN. It's quite a long time.
I've been lucky. It's been a great run. So I have zero complaints. It's a lot better than practicing law for a living.
I want to discuss that too. And I want to get into sort of the state of college basketball, the tournament, because like I said, now it is interesting to me. Tell me I know for me personally, I'm a big NFL college football guy. So for me, I feel like the college basketball season, I really don't start paying attention to it until now. And I'd be curious in your sort of over the years doing this, do you feel like there's a small percentage of people out there like me who do it that way? It's a lot of people who do it that way. What is your sort of overall perception and how people consume college basketball these days?
That's an interesting question. I mean, from my perspective, I haven't noticed anything changing over the years because I'm immersed in it and the people I'm around most are immersed in it.
Right.
But the numbers have remained pretty steady. It's just you've seen other things rise up. Football is way more popular now than it was 30 years ago when I started with ESPN. So that's certainly been a change. And look, I mean, the media is in the analytics business too. So I think there's a lot more time spent talking about football, even when there's no football being played. And so that's a change. But if that's what the viewing public expects, media companies are going to give it to them. But from my perspective, I haven't noticed a difference in my job. There may be a little bit less, fewer requests coming like from SportsCenter, stuff like that during the season than we had, 20 years ago, because football's eaten up a lot of that time. But that's not my decision. But the game broadcasts are exactly the same. The fan interaction is exactly the same, if not greater. And not to take you down this road, but I used to laugh when people would say, I loved the game back in the 70s and 80s, when you could do, and you're like, there was one game on a week back then. The game of the week was literal.
Right,
There
right.
were so few games on. Now we've got thousands of games on, and it's all over the place. So I think fan engagement is actually up over the years.
Yeah. Just as you were talking, I'm thinking in my head, I think one of the things NFL and college football as well, like you said, back in the day, we had Sunday night, Monday night football, and then that was it. Now they have Thursday. College football now plays on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, so that you get that action. And I wonder if that has sort of taken some people away maybe from college basketball during the regular season, or at least the start of the season. I mean, I don't know if there's a way to maybe push up the start a little bit, but it would be, to go head to head with the NFL. I mean, listen, you have no choice. That's when the kids are there, but it would be, I wish there was a better way outside of just when the tournament starts to sort of have some more juice for college basketball, either while maybe put your best games as soon as the football season ends. I don't know how to do it, but it seems like something could be done.
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot. And from my perspective, again, it's not my job. I'm not in programming. I don't do media rights deals, but just as an observer and being, again, immersed in it, a couple things that I thought would be interesting and I think would really help basketball is, it's not about competing with football, but it's about, to me, understanding the viewing public. And our best college basketball's best intersectional matchups are when, like Kansas plays Kentucky, or Duke plays Kansas, or North Carolina plays UCLA, stuff like that. My thought would be, let's move some conference inventory into late November and through December, and let's move those really big time games into January and February, when people are really more likely to pay attention and they would really be into it. Duke recently played Illinois at the Garden, but they had to jam that into their schedule. They had an opening there and they jammed it in. And we used to have that with the Big 12 SEC challenge, where each institution could, kind of jam in a non-conference game in their conference schedule. I think you have to open up those schedules and make it to where those games are played when they matter the most. And you'll get pushback from coaches that'll say, well, a conference championship's really important, all that stuff. I get it. But the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee doesn't look at your conference. They look at your overall body of work. So it really doesn't matter when you play the games. It's that you play the games. So I think that would really help and help build some momentum into the tournament, because there are a lot of people, and there are a lot of people in football too, that just watch the Super Bowl or just watch the playoffs. That happens too. Yeah. But we have a lot of people that just watch the NCAA tournament and watch championship week. And hey, welcome on the bandwagon. You don't have to, there's no requirement that you watch everything.
Right. It is amazing. I was just going to say, I feel like no matter what goes on that particular season, no matter what the state of college basketball is, once that tournament comes, it feels to me, at least, like every year it becomes a bigger and bigger part of Americana. I mean, it is, especially those first 2 days. I mean, it's like a holiday in this country. I think the gambling situation has helped it tremendously. But that tournament is still maybe right behind the Super Bowl, the biggest event in sports all year.
It's really fun. And I think, I don't know when all this bracket stuff started. I don't remember that happening when I was in college and my teams played in the NCAA tournament, where everybody filled out a bracket.
Really?
But now
that did not happen when you were in college.
I don't remember it. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but it certainly didn't happen to this level. I mean, I know it didn't happen anywhere near this level, where your grandmother's filling one out and asking you for your picks to help her out with it. That certainly changed, where families are doing it, and you have your dog do it. Everybody has fun with that. Yeah. That doesn't necessarily mean they know who the teams are or care, but it is grown into this gigantic 3-week party, which is great. I don't compare the regular season to the tournament and say, boy, it's really diminished the value of the regular season. I'm not one of those people. I think you take the events as they come and enjoy what they are. And I don't. There's a lot of people who will voice to me that, boy, it's so hard to keep up with now. It used to be so much easier. The transfer portal, all that stuff. Well, the transfer portal is in football, and people don't care. They still watch it. That has nothing to do with it. Players are staying longer now than they stayed for years and years. We still lose the one and dones, the very best players, to the NBA early, but a lot of the truly outstanding kind of all-America, all-league caliber players are sticking around even longer now. That's not the issue. College basketball has some things it could do to make the game on the floor better. We need to fix these ridiculous replay rules. We need to go to quarters. There are all kinds of things that make it. We need freedom of movement. There's all kinds of things that would make the game better, but I'm not sure how much that would increase viewership during the regular season.
All right. So since you brought that up, let me stay there and then we'll go back. Tell me how would you have what are your issues with replay and how would you have it? What system would you implement if you were in charge?
Jimmy, when about 10, 11 years ago, Jim Delaney started a committee called the Men's Basketball Officiating Committee, and I was on it for 10 years or so. And when the replay rule was being discussed and then sent on to the Rules Committee, he said something really prescient. He said, once you let replay in, it's like ivy. It's going to take over everything. We're not going to be able to control it. And he was right. Replay is out of control. It is not the officials' fault. They're dealing with the rules as have been provided to them. But the Rules Committee, we need to dial it back. I mean, we live with the officials' calls for 38 minutes. In the last 2 minutes of the game, every time the ball goes out of bounds, we're reviewing the Zapruder film. It's ridiculous. The last 2 minutes of a game take forever. Overtime takes forever. We're reviewing every goaltending call, every 3-point, if the foot is near the line, we're reviewing everything. And my thing would be to quote unquote fix it is let's go to the NBA rule. The NBA gives each team, each coach one challenge. They can challenge a call. If they win that challenge, they keep it one more time. So they have a maximum of 2 challenges per game. And that's why you see in the NBA, a player gets a call he doesn't like, he waves his finger around. That means, hey, let's challenge that. Mm-hmm. It's so much cleaner and easier, and it puts something on the teams to be right. Because if they're not right, they lose it. And now there's a new rule that the officials can go back and call a proximate foul. So the ball can go off your opponent and go off your opponent, and they award it to the opponent. And you say, I want to challenge that. And the replay shows you fouled the guy. So not only do you not get the ball, then you may hang a foul on your best player, and they're shooting free throws. So right. it brings some risk into it, and you better be right. And I think it's a fantastic rule the NBA has, and I don't see why we don't adopt it immediately.
You think there's any way college changes their replay? Like, have you heard any rumblings that they may address it, or you think the way it is it's going to stay this way?
I have heard that there's some movement that way. Okay. A supervisor of officials of one of the bigger conferences told me he thinks they can get that done because he agrees that it should go that way. They tell you that the officials get it right 90% of the time. I'm not sure on out of bounds calls that's true, given the amount of overturns we have in the last 2 minutes.
Right.
But my thing is, why are we living with it for 38 minutes and then the last 2, it's this hypersensitive, right, we have to get it right thing. But then there's a foul, we can't look at the foul that right. helped cause it. There's a lot. My thing is just look, whether the officials do a good job or a bad job, and by and large they do a good job, we have to live with it. So let's just live with it and move on. I don't understand why we can't do it, because it ruins the viewing experience for people at home, and it ruins it in the arena.
Right. Funny, it kind of reminds me like how you brought up the last 2 minutes. It's different. It reminds me of football when the refs have to spot the ball for the first 58 minutes of the game. They gingerly walk up and spot the ball. Then when it's 2 minutes, they're running around like chickens with their heads cut off. It's why change for the last 2 minutes? Same thing there with replay. When you have no flow late in the game, it really just kills sort of the fun and the excitement. The flow is very important. You mentioned you want quarters instead of halves. What's the benefit of quarters over halves? Why is that something you would change?
Well, men's college basketball is the only game of basketball played in the world that doesn't have quarters. That should tell the men's basketball community something right there. But the reason I want it is because it provides more clock plays, which is always a good thing. But you can reset team fouls at the end of the first and the third quarter, so you're not stuck with the fouls that you have early in the 20-minute periods.
Right.
So after you hit the 10-minute mark, you go to the quarter break, then you start with 0 team fouls again for the next quarter, and it will reduce the amount of free throws on common fouls, which I think is a good thing. Everybody's got their number of fouls. That's fine. But, you're probably going to get a call or two early in the game, early in a half, that you don't think are good ones. And you're stuck with that the whole half. I don't think that's the right way to go about it. I think it's been proven now. But the reason that we're given that, I think everybody agrees we should go to quarters. But there's pushback because of commercial inventory on the men's side. There's too much commercial inventory to make it work without taking timeouts away from the coaches. And my response is, then take timeouts away from the coaches. Right. Like they want to fit everything in a 2-hour window, and with replay, it's really hard to do now.
I was going to say, what game is ever? Yeah, there's no game that's ever 2 hours.
I think overall, you're right when you talk about Power 5. But when you talk about the overall landscape of the game, having 360 Division I teams, they'll tell you these other games are getting over with quickly. And well, of course they are. They don't have the same technology. The games aren't as big. They're not on television like quite like the big shots. And those are the games we need to cater to. Those are the ones that are being sold for the most money. Sure. And some people tend to forget that this is a business. And I don't think it's the right business decision to stay with 20-minute halves, especially when the rest of the world's gone the other way. It's almost like you want to say, well, why don't we send a memo out to the rest of the world why we're smarter? And I don't think that memo would go over very well.
All right, so we want quarters, we want replay to be fixed. Also, this time of the year when the tournament comes into the forefront, and I mentioned, it's a part of Americana. Everyone gets into the tournament, and every single year at this time of when the calendar turns to sort of March 1st and the tournament comes into play, we always hear about expanding the tournament. Are you in favor of expanding the tournament? Or are you against expanding the tournament? Where do you stand on that?
I'm against it because I haven't heard anybody make a compelling case for why it needs to be expanded. Right now it's 68 teams. Nobody cares until we get to the main draw. Until we get to the first Thursday of the 64 team draw, nobody cares. Now, back when it was 32 teams, when I was a kid, only one team per conference went. So that meant the second best team in the country might not go to the NCAA tournament. Of course, that made no sense.
Right.
But now you've got all the best teams. You're just asking for teams at the end of the line that had a ton of chances to get in. And maybe they were close to the line, or you thought they should have been, whatever, don't get in. And, part of me is kind of like, this is supposed to be competition. Like that's part of what makes the regular season compelling, is you have to win games to get in. If we expand, the only reason we're expanding at Jimmy's for money. And money's an important reason. I get it. Yeah. But maybe it provides more inventory to the media rights holder. Maybe but more likely it's for schools that wouldn't have gotten in otherwise to gain units and make money from getting into the tournament. I don't care for it, but I do think reasonable minds can differ on that. It's not the one thing about the NCAA tournament. It has proven to be idiot proof. No matter what we do to it,
right,
it remains viable and strong. And that's been proven over the years, because we've made some questionable decisions and they all seem to work out. But it's still, I maintain that very few people relative to the people that care about the tournament care about anything that happens before the the first Thursday, the recognized first and second rounds.
It's funny because I was going to say, do you think there's anything that could ruin the tournament? And it doesn't seem like there is. Like you said, it's idiot proof.
Yeah, I don't think it could ruin the tournament, but it can maybe water it down a little bit. Like, I'm not crazy about anything that makes your better teams play more games and have more banana peels thrown at their feet. So like, say, take any bubble team this year. Like, I was looking at something. North Carolina this year is on the bubble. Well, I don't think North Carolina should have to play a game in Dayton for that. They should take the teams that are at the bottom of the draw. Like, I can't imagine that Wimbledon would make, Roger Federer play in Dayton before the main draw. It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So, and it's because the smaller conference teams don't want, they think it's a stigma that they have to, qualify again to play one of the big shots in the main draw. And you're getting the money. I don't understand the whole thing. Like, they know who the best teams are. The best teams should be seeded as such, and there's no reason to have 2 11 seeds play while 2 16 seeds play to make everybody feel better. I don't think that. I think that's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, like you said, if the tournament expands, you said it. I mean, it's all about money. So more games for ESPN, or not ESPN in this case, it would be CBS, TNT, Turner Sports. More money, more commercials, and again, I would say this, and second time I'm referencing gambling, and I don't want to come across as a degenerate, even though I am, but don't underestimate the appeal of that. I think, we just saw it when the NHL had their 4 nations last week. I read something about it was bet on like an NFL Sunday game. I think you're going to see for this tournament, you just get the vibe that like the betting is going to set records. So more games for people to bet on, then those gambling companies will be happy, and those gambling companies are all in bed with the network. So dollars, and dollars. That's what it's always about, unfortunately.
But I don't mind that. I mean, I think doing things for money is a good reason. I think the problem that college sports has had is they maintain this sort of rhetorical stance that this is all about education, and it's not. It's about money and competition, and it's a multi-billion-dollar entertainment industry. There's nothing wrong with that. You can go to school and do this at the same time. That's been proven. And now that players are being compensated, not to the level of their worth just yet, but now they're being compensated. The NCAA told us for years that was going to ruin everything. People were going to stop watching, and dogs and cats were going to live together. And ratings are up across the board. So how do they explain that? What they said was BS, and I think everybody knows it.
You've mentioned a couple of times, and I sort of fit into that category where I'm not paying attention maybe on a night in, night out basis. The conference tournaments start, I get into it. The tournament's there, I get into it. And one of the things I've said on this podcast, if my regular listeners have heard me say this, I'm going to throw sort of my take at you, and you tell me if you think I'm a complete moron. Don't hesitate to say it. When I do watch the games, I am stunned at how bad the quality is. Now, let me just say this. The games are exciting, and they're fun, and they're close, and they're thrilling. I am blown away by the amount of missed free throws, missed threes, and missed layups, especially layups in college basketball. Do you think that's a ridiculous take by me, or do you think that's fair?
Well, I don't think it's backed up by the numbers. I think if you look at percentages across the board, they're actually up rather than down, and scoring is up. One of the things that is happening, like the players now generally are better than they've ever been. They're better athletes. They're in better condition, better rest and recovery, you name it, more skilled across the board. That doesn't mean that Michael Jordan wouldn't be the best player now. Of course he would. But I think what we're seeing, and this has been a pet peeve of mine for a long time, is college basketball is the most physical form of basketball on the planet right now, along with maybe FIBA, but certainly in the United States. Like, it's more physical than an NBA game. And so that takes away from the players' ability to complete plays when they're being bodied up all the time. And when you have a great shooter that's coming off screens, they're just getting grabbed and chucked and bear hugged when they're coming off a top lock situation. It happens all the time. I could put an edit together from just the games I've done in the last month that'd make your hair curl. It'd make mine curl, and I don't have any. But we haven't been able as a game to wrap our arms around it. I don't know if we don't have the will, or if there are just too many teams, too many officials, too many conferences. But if we could clean that up, I think you would see scoring go through the roof. Because these players, like, you watch them in practice, you watch them in warmups, they don't miss, and then they get in games, and when you're getting grabbed and pushed around for 40 minutes, of course it's going to be more difficult to establish a rhythm. And frankly, Jimmy, that's one of the reasons in the NBA you'll see somebody take an open three rather than challenge a 7-footer at the rim, because it's hard to complete those plays. You know, when you look at the analytics of it, you're a heck of a lot better off taking an open shot than you are taking a challenged one, even one that's really close to the basket.
Yeah, and I'm talking specifically the tournament. Maybe it's because teams are a little nervous. It's the tournament. Maybe the games are at different times in the day. Maybe they're tired. But I see missed layups in college in that tournament, and I'm like, I don't understand what the hell's going on with all the missed layups. But
yeah, and maybe maybe I misunderstood, but maybe that's part. I can't put my finger on exactly sort of what you're talking about, but that may have to do with the fact that, especially in the first round, we don't have the 64 best teams in college basketball playing.
Right.
You've got the 35 best teams, and then you've got conference champions, and they're not always the best teams.
Yeah.
But people really enjoy it because of the occasional upset. Like you have the Yale versus Auburn thing, which, how many people thought that would happen? But the other teams all lost, most of them.
Yeah.
And some of the upsets that you have are seeding mistakes and all that stuff. But, some of these teams can really play. And there are a few that can't. And then they get up against a big shot, and it makes it even more difficult for them to play the way they normally play.
Like I said, the games are exciting. The tournament's exciting, the games are exciting. Sometimes I watch some of the quality, and I'm like, it's a little rough. But that could just be me. Like I said, I'm just coming into it. I'm not locked in. So that's just my own observation. I want to get into some stuff about you as a broadcaster. We talked about you've been at ESPN since '95, which is quite a run. And you have worked with some pretty legendary people over these years. Raftery, McDonough, Dan Schulman, currently. Give me, and then, like you mentioned, you're also a lawyer. So was broadcasting always something you wanted to get into? Why did you get into it? How do you mix the broadcasting with being a lawyer? Give me something on that.
It was something I had my eye on since I was in high school, but it kind of came up in an odd way. I was asked when I became a pretty good high school player, you might have an article done about you in the local paper or the LA Times. I grew up in Los Angeles, and it seemed like I was always asked, what do you want to do after basketball? And the truth is, I didn't have a really good answer. So at that time, back in the late 70s, early 80s, there were a number of athletes that were finishing their careers and getting into broadcasting. Whether it's Frank Gifford had done it, Don Drysdale, folks like that. And so I said, maybe broadcasting. I'd like to get into broadcasting. And coaches read that, and they started adding that into the recruiting pitch that they made. So when Syracuse recruited me, they said, hey, we've got this Newhouse School of Communications. Other places did the same. And when Coach K started recruiting me at Duke, he says, we've got some contacts in the broadcasting industry. And when I went to Duke, he introduced me to Chuck Howard, who was a very big time producer at ABC Sports at the time. So during the summertime, when I was in college, I worked for ABC Sports as a runner. So I did the PGA Championship. I did bowling with Nelson Burton Jr. and Chris Schenkel, and did the Olympics in '84 and Monday Night Baseball, all that stuff. And it kind of
What'd you do for Monday Night Baseball? Just curious.
I was a production assistant, so I was a runner.
Okay.
I would be some games I'd be in the truck. I was a timeout coordinator. I had to get people to interviews on time and make sure that the producer had his flight set and stuff. I did everything a runner would do. Get coffee. I did it all.
Was that Keith Jackson or Al Michaels who was doing the games in '84 and ABC?
It was Keith Jackson,
Keith,
and then
okay.
Digger Phelps was the color man when he was the head coach at Notre Dame. And one of my jobs with the Olympic team that Bob Knight coached traveled around to play NBA teams, and we had an exhibition game in Minneapolis, and one of my jobs was to pick up Digger Phelps at the airport. So I picked him up at the airport to take him to his hotel, and I got lost on the way back. There was no GPS, or you didn't have your phone or anything like that. I got lost, and I still remember him yelling at me the whole time. What are you looking at, real estate, Bilas? What's wrong with you? He just kind of yelled at me the whole time. And but I mean, I picked up his dry cleaning, and we got to be really good friends, and then later on work together. But it was a great education on the behind the camera part of broadcasting. I still hark back to it because the announcers got treated a lot better back then. But it was really fun, and that sort of whet my appetite to get into it.
When you have to do a Duke game, do you dread it or do you enjoy it? And I ask that because, especially now with social media, I don't know if you check it or not. We can get into that, but everybody thinks even the most neutral announcer is rooting against their team. You obviously went to Duke, so you'd have a reason maybe to want Duke to win. But what is your mentality when you have to do a Duke game in terms of you just ignore the bullshit from people watching, or do you're hardcore, I am not biased in any way, shape, or form when you do a Duke game?
I'm the latter. I don't care because most of the time you'll find that 50% of each fan base thinks you were for the other team. Is that old line, which is probably true. Sometimes when people have talked about it, you'll say, well, and it's not really the Duke thing, but in another game they say, hey, why did you talk about the other team so much? I said, well, did the other team win? Well, yes. Well, that's probably why. The team that plays better, maybe you talk about it a little bit more, but you try to convince people of this, but I don't care whether they believe me or not. I don't care who wins. I'm 61 years old. I do 50, 60 games a year. I don't care who wins. I just want a close. When I go to game, the one thing I'm rooting for is a close game. I don't really care about the rest of it because I'm going to have another game the next week. You want to honor the game and do the best job you can, and make sure that you document it the right way and you say the right thing at the right time in the right tone. But the rest of it, I'm not even worried about. And when I first started, Coach K told me one thing. He said when I was doing one of his games, he said, don't ever pull any punches with regard to us. He says, if we're good, say it. If we're not, say it. And he said, because your credibility is on the line. And I mean, I'm glad he said that. I hope I didn't need it.
Right.
But being a lawyer helped me with all that stuff. I mean, it doesn't, that stuff has never really bothered me.
Yeah. And Duke is always good anyway. So there's not many times where you have to bash him. I mentioned that you worked with Raft and McDonough, currently Shulman. I should have also mentioned the great Dick Enberg was your partner. And I'm curious, so there was a situation, I think from 2003 to 2010 where ESPN would loan you to CBS and you did the tournament with Enberg. Did that stop because of you, because of ESPN, because of CBS? How come you don't do the tournament anymore?
I don't really know. I think it's because ESPN decided they didn't want to do it anymore. My understanding, and I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but as you know, the rights holder of the tournament can put restrictions on how highlights are used on other outlets. Right. So SportsCenter could only use, I don't know what the number was, maybe 1.5 minutes per 30 minutes of highlights of the tournament. And I think when I was traded over there, the trade was me and I think Len Elmore at the time, me and Len Elmore for highlight restrictions being taken off, and they could run more highlights during an hour SportsCenter, whatever it was. I don't know all the ins and outs of it. All I knew was I loved it. I got to do games with Dick Enberg, who I met when I was in college, and we had become good friends. And to be able to work with him and do the games was a joy. It's the national championship, so you work the whole year doing 50 games or whatever we do, plus studio and all that stuff, and you're immersed in it. And then you get the opportunity to do that. It was really fun. But I'll never take for granted the opportunity to have worked with Dick for those years, because it was I grew up listening to him. He did UCLA games when I was a little kid, and then did the Angels and Rams and all that. He had a show called Sports Challenge. It was a big deal. And then to get to meet him and be around him when he was doing our games when I was in college was really cool. And I got to do things with him off, kind of away from the game. So like I had to host him for a talk he gave one time. So I spent half a day with him, and then getting to work with him was a true joy and honor. Yeah, you name it. It was fantastic.
So you were bummed when you weren't able to do the tournament anymore?
Yeah. I mean, I would love to do it. But I've always been a team guy, and I signed a contract with ESPN, so they determined that. So when they did the deal, I was thrilled. When they didn't, I was disappointed. But I don't work for anybody but them, so they get to say I signed on the bottom line. They get to say what they want.
I've always been fascinated. I'll just make this comment. You don't have to sort of piggyback unless you want to, but as someone who covers this and observed this, I've always wondered, I've always wanted to see what it would be like if ESPN had the tournament one year. It's been at CBS forever, at least since, I started paying attention to all this stuff. It just seems like ESPN, I feel like, would make it even bigger than it is, if that's even possible. They have the manpower, they have the networks. But that contract is like, with CBS and Turner, is like forever with the NCAA tournament. So I don't think we'll see it on ESPN anytime soon. But in the sports media world, if you're playing like fantasy commissioner, I would love to see the tournament one year on ESPN just to see what they would do with it.
Yeah, I mean, I would too, but I'll give you an example of sort of what I learned. My first year that ESPN traded me over there to do the tournament, I got my assignment as to where I was going, and then the producer I was working with called and said, all right, here's what's going to happen. This is going to be the craziest weekend of your life. There are 8 teams. You're not going to know half of them. There's going to be a tremendous amount of homework and a lot of pressure on you, because when we get to the site, you're going to be expected to give us scouting reports on each team and what we need to know and all that stuff. And so I said, okay. And I was working for ESPN. So when I got the assignment, we finished Selection Sunday. I get the assignment, and I'd done games for 7 of the 8 teams. So I already had scouting reports on all of them. And I dug into the 8th team that I didn't know quite as well. And when we got there, they had a big conference room, and we did I went through the big whiteboard, and I went through the scouting reports for every team, including background on the players. Here's a story on this guy and his mother, whatever it was. And afterwards, the producer came up and said, man, the amount of work you put in. I said, I really didn't have to put in that much work. I mean, what do you think we do over at ESPN? This is our job. This is part of what we do, and so it really wasn't that heavy of a lift. I felt like I brought years of institutional knowledge on these teams in. Not that they don't have it, but they certainly don't do as many games as we do. And so that was an eye opener for me.
It's a shame. It's a shame you can't get that trade going again and get you over there doing some tournament games.
I would vote for that in 2 seconds. And especially since that CBS jacket is a great thing. It gets you into every room you want to go in. You don't have to show a credential. They give you clothing and ties and shirts. It was awesome.
I think when I had Nance on here maybe a year or two ago, I asked him, I said, you guys you and Tony show up every Sunday and you've still got the CBS logo on the jacket. You're the only network left that does that. He was like, I like it. I want to keep it. He was all into that logo on the jacket. So I ask anyone who comes on this podcast who's ever worked with the great Bill Raftery to give me a Raftery story. And when I had Brad Nessler on during the college football season, and Brad Nessler was talking about his friendship with Ric Flair, and I said, who can hang longer going out, at night? And he said Raft actually can hang longer than Ric Flair. So I always, and Ian comes on, he's always gives you a Raftery story. And I will say this: that crew Sean McDonough on play-by-play with you and Raftery. He was a tremendous crew. Raftery obviously left. But give me your thoughts on Raftery, and if you have a story, and because everyone comes on here and they just say what you see is what you get with Raft. There's no TV Raftery and then non-TV Raftery. It's all one Raftery.
That's true. But what you see is what you get. You get way more off camera than on. And so the joy of working with him was only one part of the greater whole of the joy of just being around him. And I've said this before that, Raft loves basketball, but I think he loves the people in the game more than he loves the game. And there's no person I know that doesn't smile when his name's brought up or when he walks in a room. He's just the best. We'd walk into a room to see like Jim Boeheim or something before the game, and we'd start talking about the game, and in the middle, Raph, they go, "Knock off the bullshit, will you? Give us something we can use." And it was just so great. I'll give you one story that I can repeat. Yeah. So when McDonough, Raft, and I used to do Big Mondays, the Big East game on Big Monday, Raft would usually be coming from a CBS game over the weekend. And so we would always try to get together on Monday morning or Monday lunch and have a bite to eat. And then we'd go watch the teams work out and be ready for the game that night. So we were in Philly to do a Villanova game. And we got together at some lunch place. So McDonough and I got there, and then Raph got there just 10 minutes after us. And he sits down, and McDonough says, "Well, how was the game with CBS? How's Vern?" And Raph looks at him. He goes, "Oh, it was great. We went out to dinner the night before, and we talked about the business, and we talked about all the great broadcasters. Your name didn't come up." I almost spit out whenever I was drinking because the whole thing was a big setup. Yeah, and even McDonough laughed his ass off. But that was Raph. Like everything was fun. Yeah. And whether we went out before and we knew we were going to go out afterwards, he invited everybody. Everybody was his friend. And he's just the most enjoyable human being to be around any time of day or night. And whenever my phone rings at 3 a.m. and it's him, I always pick up because I know it's going to be good.
That is amazing. So Raph does the 3 a.m. phone call. That is
not always, but every once in a while. It's usually when your name comes up and he says, "Let's call that Hump, see if he's up." But he everything's fun. But he's also one of the most thoughtful human beings I've ever been around. I still have it. When my Duke team lost in the championship game in 1986, we were the number one team. We got clipped in the final by Louisville. It was really disappointing. There was a really nice article written about our team in the New York Times about, it said like Duke 1-2 and all this crap. And so he had the article framed and sent to each one of the seniors with a handwritten note to each one of us. And I still have it. And I thought, how cool is that? Like a guy that, and I didn't know him all that well. I mean, I'd met him, but he was a broadcaster that had done my games. We weren't friends at the time. And he's still like that. He's so thoughtful of other people. And I'll never forget how generous that was and kind.
I love that. That's great. I appreciate you sharing all that. Just a couple of more things here before we wrap it up. You're doing NBA now this season. You have a game. We're taping this on Tuesday. I think you have a game tomorrow night on Wednesday, right? You have the Rockets, I think. Yeah. What made you want to do NBA? Just, love of basketball. What made you go over to the professional side here for a little bit?
I love the NBA. I've watched it since I was a little kid. I've always been a consumer of it and a big believer in it. I think it's the best game, and I think college could really benefit by looking at the way the NBA game is played, the rules of it, how it's administered. I think it would make the college game better. But ESPN asked me, and as soon as they said, would you like to do this?" I'm like, yes. I've loved every second of it. It has been so much fun. Not only the people I work with, but the people in the NBA. It is top shelf in every way. I've loved every second of it, and I don't care how many. One, the hotels are way better. That's really nice.
Yeah.
But the product is fantastic. I mean, talking about the best players and the best coaches, it's there's nothing about it not to love.
So you enjoy the NBA game more than the college game?
Generally, yeah. But
Okay.
the college game is the atmospheres are second to none. There's a different feel to it. But just general basketball, there's nothing better than the NBA. I mean, it doesn't come close.
So you'd want to keep doing NBA games for ESPN?
I mean, I'll do whatever I'm asked to do. Like it's try not to sound like a Pollyanna in saying this, but I just love basketball.
Right.
When there's any basketball on television, I'm watching it. I watch FIBA. I was watching the Bundesliga the other night in Germany. I watch all of it. And I love watching high school. I have a camp of high school players, and I'm there every minute. I just can't get enough of watching it.
All right. So since you are a junkie, I know my listeners probably want to know this. Now, obviously, we've got a little bit before the tournament, and we don't know the teams and the selection and the seedings and all that. But if you can, give my listeners maybe 2-3 sleeper Final Four teams you think. Listen, everyone knows about Duke, Auburn, but is there? Give me a couple of sleepers for the people filling out those brackets that can make a Final Four that maybe they're not thinking of right now.
I mean, there are some teams that are outside the recognized top 5 or 6. I mean, I tend to think that there are only probably 8 teams that could win the championship. But winning a championship and get to a Final Four are 2 different things. Because you could have a team or 2 fall down in your bracket. All of a sudden, it opens up a path to the Final Four, but it doesn't open up a path to a championship. There's still usually three other teams there that can kick your ass. And NC State was an example of that last year. I mean, if you had told me in February that NC State was going to be at the Final Four, I would have asked you how'd they get the tickets. I wouldn't have imagined that. And they were a crazy bank shot away against Virginia from the season being over in the ACC tournament, and yet they go to the Final Four. So there are teams that can do that. I tend to think that a team like Iowa State is one to keep an eye on because they can really defend and they score it easier than they did last year as long as they're healthy. I think they're really talented. I mean, I tend, Duke and Auburn are the 2 best teams, but Houston is ridiculously good. Florida is just one tiny step behind Auburn and Duke. They are as complete a basketball team as you're going to find. They have size and skill up front. Their guards can really play. Their head coach is a guy named Todd Golden, who used to work with Bruce Pearl, was a head coach at San Francisco before he took the Florida job. They're legit. And then Houston's better this year than they were last year. And they were a Final Four team last year that just got their best player hurt against Duke. If that didn't happen, I think they would have won that game and gone to the Final Four. But they're better offensively. They can really shoot it this year. They got 3 or 4 guys that shoot 40% from 3, and their entire team shoots right at 40, which is top 5 in the country. So Kelvin Sampson, they still defend and rebound at a high level. So I think they'll be heard from before it's over.
Okay, and Iowa State maybe a little bit of a sleeper there from Jay. We mentioned the brackets here in terms of the helping them grow the popularity of the sport and the tournament. Do you enter pools?
No, I do one. So ESPN always asks us to do a bracket.
Oh, yeah.
We usually have to do, not usually, every year we do it while the selection show's on. So it gives you very little time to think. And that, I think that's better because you're going off of what you know and then not overthinking it. Because after the selection show's over, I do this article for ESPN.com where I call it the more than 5-minute bracket. I say they give us 5 minutes to make our picks. I need more than that, make excuses if my picks suck. But then when I have more time to think about it, the one I do on the selection show is usually better. But I try as best I can to just do the one and stick with it. Because if you change your mind or something, people are like, what? And I always laugh, like this happens every year. not every year, but almost every year, somebody will send me a check because they used my picks and won their pool, and they'll send me like a bonus check or something. I've never cashed one, but I always think that's funny.
Whoa, I got to get into this now. Hold on, because now you've hit like the degenerate gambler in me here. So I want to know, what's the biggest amount someone has sent you?
$100, something like that. But
and where do they send the check? To ESPN?
My law firm. My law firm.
To your law firm.
Yeah.
And it's usually, and this happens almost every year.
Yeah. Well, not every year, because my picks aren't great every year. But I got one last year, and I just toss them because I'm not going to cash it, and I don't want to take the time to send it back.
Right.
So I just toss it. It's very nice of them to do that. But over the last 20, 25 years, whatever, that's happened. I'd probably say at least once every other year.
Wow.
Or a thank you note, like you get a thank you note from somebody. I won my pool, and I never win my pool, and I took your picks and won my pool, something like that. It's fun.
Yeah. No, that's fun. It's funny when we at the very top, when we started talking about the tournament, I had a question in my head and I had completely forgotten about it. Now this just triggered it, because I was going to say, when you, on that Sunday at 6 o'clock, 6:30, when those brackets come out, does your phone start blowing up from people who know you saying, what should I who should I pick in my final four? Who should I pick in my finals? Because I know, I have a good buddy who covers golf. So when the Masters comes along, right away I text him, who should I bet on? Do you get hit up right away for the tips for people's brackets?
No, it's usually days, like the few days after. It's not necessarily right when the bracket comes out or that Sunday.
Right.
But they really don't have to have it in until probably
Thursday
Wednesday
morning.
or Thursday, whatever it is. So I'll get hit up by some friends here or there. What has happened in the past is, during Champ Week, I may have a friend who wants to put something down on a game, and they'll say, "What's going to happen? What do you think of this game?"
Yeah. And
I always tell them, like, I'll tell you what's going to happen. Don't tell me what the line is, because that'll screw me up. Like, I'm not a gambler.
Right.
Like I'm in a football pool with my friends, just like everybody, but it's more for the laughs of it than anything. I don't know anything about football. I'm just throwing stuff against the wall. But basketball, if I don't know the line, I can say, okay, this team's better. I think they should win by 10 points or something. And my friends tell me I do better for them when I don't know the line.
Interesting. I love I can't get over the checks. That's blowing me away.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, people are really
I love
nice.
it.
At least I don't get death threats when my picks suck. So I guess it's there's a two-way street to that. I'm lucky that the other street doesn't get me.
Absolutely. Last thing here, I just got to ask, because I noticed I checked your Twitter feed just to see if there was anything I needed to ask you about. And you have 1.8 million followers with this, which is very impressive. But I know you follow two accounts on Twitter. Just two.
I didn't know I followed two. I thought I followed zero. I must have hit a button wrong.
Is that true?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know who I'm following.
I could tell you if you really want to know, but I said, I wonder if I was like, is there a method here to the madness of only following two people? So I assume you don't check your mentions.
I don't look at Twitter at all anymore.
Okay.
I found it to be kind of toxic, honestly, and that's no disrespect to anyone. It's just I don't get anything from it. When the follower thing, and not the me following zero, and I did think it was zero, but
let me just tell you, because I did a double take, because the two things that are currently being followed by your account, one is Hoop Central, which would sort of make sense, I guess. And then the other is an account called The Final Four Is Not on the Schedule, and is the #1 Michigan State Hoops podcast.
I have no idea how that happened, but maybe I was looking at something and hit the wrong button. That's possible.
Okay, I had to ask.
I'll let somebody remedy that. Thanks for letting me know. But that came from the following zero, I should say, came from when I first got on Twitter. I didn't know how it worked. And so I didn't understand the mentions. I didn't understand the following thing. I just used it kind of as a joke machine. And when somebody had hit me up saying, "What, are you too good?" Is I guess those are mentions. Are you too good to follow anybody? And I thought that was funny. And my response was, "Yes, I'm too good to follow anybody." And I thought, okay, well, I don't use it for news, to get news.
No.
So I just kept it at 0, kind of as a joke that I'm this egomaniacal, being.
I love it. Yeah.
Which I hope isn't true, but it was just a joke.
Got it. Do you watch Curb Your Enthusiasm at all? Larry David?
I played golf with Larry David this summer.
Okay, now we're going to add 10 minutes now onto this podcast. But they had the episode in the final season when Larry was getting chastised for not participating in the group chat on text message. And the guy said to Larry, "You think you're too good for the group chat?" And Larry said, "Yes, I do think I'm too good for the group chat." So I love it.
We're the same there.
All right, so you played golf with Larry David this summer. How did it come about? What do you have a relationship with Larry? Because I'm a Larry David nut. So you just opened a whole can of worms here.
I played in a golf tournament in Denver, Colorado, and I played in it the last few years. It's a great time, and I got a something about the practice round, and I was paired with 2 people I knew, and then it says Larry David. And I thought, okay, it's got to be just somebody named Lawrence David, that he probably gets questions all the time about being Larry David. And I get there and it's Larry David. And he was awesome. But before we teed off, it was like we were in an episode of Curb. He made this announcement like, "Don't expect anything. Like, I'm not very good. Don't expect anything." And he teed the ball up. And it was a kind of a warm day, and he was dressed like it was going to be 30 degrees. And he striped one down the fairway about 250 yards. And then he turned around and he said, "That never happens. That never happens." And we were like, "It looked pretty good to me. Why don't you just enjoy it?" And we couldn't have been more pleasant and more fun. But the best part was, I can't remember what hole it was, but he had a downhill kind of 15-foot putt. And as soon as he hit it, he's like, "Oh no, too hard. And the putt went by the hole, I don't know, 5 or 6 feet, whatever. And he was despondent that he hit the ball too hard. And I love it. It was very, very fun.
Now he's a huge, legit sports fan. So I would imagine he was very into playing with you. Did he like pepper you with some questions or talk sports with you?
We talked sports quite a bit. It wasn't just me and him. There were 2 other people there that were involved in sports. So, there was a lot of talk about sports. And we asked him questions, too, that he probably didn't care for about entertainment. But he couldn't have been nicer. And it was a thrill, honestly. I tried not to be a fanboy the whole time.
Right.
But it was awesome. I mean, he couldn't have been better.
That's amazing. And, I love that. As soon as you said you played golf with Larry, I couldn't let you go. I had to get something in on that. But everyone always asks me like, who's my dream guest for my podcast? That's the dream guest right there. But
oh God, yeah,
it's never going to happen now that the I thought maybe, but
well, come play golf. We'll try to get in that tournament. Maybe he'll be there again.
That would be good. Oh God, I would. It's funny. He would never ever be a Twitter guy, but if he was, he'd be following Zero for sure. There's no doubt.
Oh yeah, and if he'd even used his real name.
Right. Well, Jay, I really appreciate this. A lot of fun, and really enjoyed having you on for the first time here. And enjoy the tournament. Enjoy the NBA games. You got you on. This comes out Thursday, but I know you got a game on Wednesday. So appreciate you taking the time, and we'll be obviously watching throughout the conference tournaments and everything there. So thanks a lot, Jay. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jimmy. My pleasure. Right. Thanks for having me.
This basketball season, when your favorite stars score buckets, we're alley-ooping you an opportunity to win money from watching sports with Underdog. Do you want to win up to 1,000 times your money? You can with Underdog. To play, choose whether a player will go higher or lower on one of their stats, points, assists, rebounds, blocks, and much more. You can play with as little as $1, and if you get everything right, you can win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn $1 into $1,000 just with your hoops knowledge. This week on Underdog, I'm looking at the NBA and picking Luka Doncic for higher on basically all of his stats, but especially points, rebounds. I think Luka will be motivated after the big trade. The narrative out there is that he's out of shape. He doesn't work hard. And I think that's going to push something in Luka. So I'm looking at him here on Underdog to go higher, especially points and rebounds. Download the Underdog app and sign up now using the promo code Sports Illustrated to unlock a special offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you make your first deposit. Join in on the fun when you sign up with the promo code Sports Illustrated. Claim your special offer today and get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly upon first deposit. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply, void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. All right, joining me now, Sal is in Disney, not here this week. So I called on one of my old SI buddies. Well, he's young, I'm old, but we go back from the SI days, and he has an empire in the track and field / running world with Citius Mag, podcasts, videos, the whole shebang. And he knows me very well. So I figured I'd bring on my good friend, Chris Chavez, to do the Traina Thoughts segment. Christopher, how are you?
That's the second time I think I've heard you use the empire thing when I think you had Deitch on and I came up in conversation and all that stuff, or you went on his podcast. You're too generous, but I'm happy to be here. It feels like a father catching up with his sons, and
yes.
It's always good because you had Rap on recently. So no, my pleasure.
When we were in the SI offices together, Chavez and Dan Rappaport, who was on a couple weeks ago, used to call me dad because I'm old and they're young. But tell everyone what Citius Mag is, because you do have an empire. So explain for anyone out there who's into, well, let me ask you this question as a total dummy. Is there a difference between running and track and field?
Great question. No, I think that there is, because right now running is in a super healthy place where it's having this boom. There's been so many think pieces, I think, in the New York Times and The Athletic about run clubs as dating apps now. It's taken the place of that because young people are flocking to, meetups in Washington Square Park or the West Side Highway to go for a run, and then afterwards just socialize, and that's how they're hoping to meet their special somebody. So running is, since the pandemic, has had this huge boom, because when the gyms were closed, all people could do was just go out and run for physical exercise, and so it got people hooked. And so now it's actually impossible to try and sign up for some of these races in the city because there's such a high demand. So you have to it's like buying Taylor Swift tickets, essentially. You have to be on when they open, and there's a 75-minute wait list in the queue to try and get a spot to run a 5K. It's crazy. And then on the other side of things, track, I mean, I would say there's been some momentum behind it and growing in recent years. Obviously, it's one of the sports that I love. And when I was at SI, I was the track guy in the office trying to make the case why it was a sport worth paying attention to all the time. And it gets its high moment at the Olympics and kind of disappears in the mainstream in the years in between. But I think that there's some new ventures that are taking place that are trying to capitalize off of the momentum of the Olympics. There was that Netflix series last year that had 2 seasons. And so all in all, it's trying to professionalize as a sport and stay in people's in people's minds outside of the Olympics. But that's part of my job, is to try and make it easy for people to follow. It's hard. You end up sometimes pulling up weird live streams or having to cough up, $20 a month to watch some race or whatever it is. So it's not easy to be a track fan. And what Citius does through podcasts and social and newsletters and all that stuff, it's our mission statement. It's try and make it as easy as possible to be a track fan. And so I've enjoyed it. And now I'm 4 years post SI and working for myself, running, being a little entrepreneur of sorts. And so, no, it's been fun. And yeah.
So if you are into running, into track and field, it's Citius, Citius Mag. It's called Citius Mag, but the podcast is really the big driver of things, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's a podcast where essentially, like, I don't know, to pull a comparison people could relate to. In the track world, I feel like Bill Simmons, where it's like there's no, like, I talk about what's happening in terms of just like the results of races and like the events that are taking place, but at the same time I'm able to get any guest. Like, we've had everyone, we've had world record holders, we've had Olympic champions, we've had Phil Knight on the podcast, and so like there's no one who's been like too big to try and get in the track space. And so so it's that. But then at the same time, like, I've pulled from in creating a media company, the Howard Stern model of like all the people who are part of Citius are characters. And so like you care about how we cover the sport a little bit differently. And so, the more modern sense, that's Barstool, that's John Boy. The way I say it to people, it's like, we're the John Boy of track and field, like positive vibes. Like, we're fans, and like we're unapologetically passionate and fans of the sport.
I mean, if someone's into track and running, you just sold it, because you said you're the John Boy, Barstool, and Bill Simmons.
There you go.
Track.
You get a little bit of everything. Yeah.
Yeah, seriously. And by the way, you made that comment about getting Taylor Swift tickets. You went to a Taylor Swift show, did you not?
I did last November. I went to Toronto. I was in Toronto for like 24 hours, I think it was. It was like 30 hours or so. So flew up, stayed in a hotel or Airbnb, watched the show with my wife and her two friends, and then flew back the next day. And it would probably have been cheaper than trying to get tickets at MSG or wherever.
Well, I was gonna say, how'd you get tickets?
So this is actually a really funny story. My wife's two friends, they bought 4 tickets. And then for a while, they were trying to think of like who the 2 people that were going to go to the show with them were.
Yeah, that's a big decision with the Eras tour. Like, you can't just be half-assing who you're giving those tickets to.
And it feels like a Larry David bit, but it was like, I heard of like, oh, all right, like they're still thinking about it. That means we have to be extra nice. Like, we have to invite them out to dinner constantly. Like, we got to go and hang out and just go the extra mile. And I think we racked up enough points that eventually one day we were at like a bar, and I said to them, I was like, oh, you guys are going to go see Taylor Swift in the fall, aren't you? And they're like, yeah. They're like, oh, do you want to tell him? And I had to pretend like I had no idea that, we were in consideration or in the running for the tickets. And they're like, yeah, we were hoping that you and your wife, Carrie, would want to go to the show. And I had to put on my best acting face. I was like, no, really? Oh my gosh, that's so nice. And so, I took them up on the tickets. We paid face value, which was a steal in the grand scheme of things.
Seriously. Yeah.
The best part though was like Gracie Abrams was the opener, and this was last fall. I guess like she's really boomed within the last couple months, but that's like getting now Gracie Abrams tickets at Radio City are starting at like $450, and I wasn't even like that big. Yeah, it's crazy. What? And I wasn't even that big of a fan of Gracie Abrams. Knew maybe like 1 or 2 songs, but my wife and her friends like made these dinner plans to go right before the concert. And I was like, no, like we cannot miss Gracie Abrams. They're like, I didn't know you were that big of a fan or that passionate. I was like, Radio City tickets are $450. Like, this is like, we're getting that for free with the Taylor Swift show. And so we got there early enough, saw Gracie Abrams perform. They went to the merch line. They went to go get drinks. And I was just standing there by myself, just enjoying Gracie Abrams with, all these, teenage girls around me, crying their eyes out, singing every song. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm getting a $450 show for free right now. And I was happy. So all in all, one of the best concerts I think I've ever been to.
Yeah, well, that's what everyone says. But this is why I miss being in an office with you, because this was how I was able to know what was going on in the world with people under the age of 40, basically. Like, I've heard the name Gracie Abrams, but if she was standing here in front of me, I would have no idea who she is. Couldn't tell you one song. And I have really gotten really bad with knowing what the hell's going on in the world of pop culture without being in the office and having the young people to help me out.
We need to get a co-working space in the city that, you know, we both just go into twice a week or something like that. And I'll keep you up to date. You know, her dad is J.J. Abrams, right?
Yes, I know. Yeah, I know
Okay.
that. But
Eventually,
in terms
you
of her,
start to learn more.
But
Yeah.
in terms of her music, I don't know anything, and I don't know anything about any of these shows anymore. It's really bad. Like the disbanding of The Office, people moving on. Like it's hurt my life a lot, I have to say. So
Yeah. How are you
I need
feeling
it.
about just sort of like constant rumors about, like, you know, the spin-offs for TV shows? I'm glad that The Office has never really like done it.
Yeah,
Because it just, you know, even the Frasier might be like maybe the most successful of all of them, where it's like you had Cheers and then Frasier went off and did its own thing, and some people probably like Frasier more than Cheers. I don't. I'm a Cheers guy. And then the revival of Frasier, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like it's just pulling at strings, and with the streaming services nowadays, they are just gonna try and, you know, start something, start a
right.
spinoff, get a couple more, you know, 1,000 subscribers, and try and hook people onto like the OTT service. But it never really pans out, and I'm glad that The Office has stayed away from it.
Yeah, see, I don't think I would want The Office or Seinfeld to do another like a spin-off series. What I'd want is like a one-off.
Yeah.
Like just do an hour show, catch up where everyone is, and the Seinfeld
Not even a full movie.
reunion.
When Entourage did that, like it didn't
Yeah,
really pan out.
well, that show, I like, I I was like 2 seasons in out on that show because every episode was the same. It was like,
Yeah.
oh, what's the guy, Adrian Grenier? He had to get a movie made, and the agent would be yelling, and the little shit guy would be like doing something. Like it was just the same episode every week. But like the Seinfeld reunion on Curb was so brilliant. So like that's how it should be done. You don't need a whole series to
How
tarnish the
did you?
legacy.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember because, you know, I'm a devout, you know, SI Media podcast listener,
Yeah,
and I sometimes when the guest doesn't interest me, I just skip straight to Traina Thoughts.
yeah, I hear that
Did
a
you ever
lot.
get around to discussing like the Curb finale and like what your thoughts were? Because like it, to your point, like it wasn't a Seinfeld reunion, but I thought that it had all the callbacks to, you know, what the criticism of the Seinfeld finale was, and
Yeah.
in a way, like it put a great bow on both series.
Yeah, I loved the Curb finale. I thought it was great. I loved the callback. The Jerry appearance was good. It was the classic Jerry Larry banter. You got everything you needed. I thought it was really well done. I mean, I hate that the show is over, but see, like I feel like Curb is a show like he could do once a year, like do a half
Yeah.
an hour once a year, and just like, I mean, like, can you imagine him doing a show now with like what's going on? Just he could really. It would be nice if he could pick his spots, but he's older now too. He's not going to do like a full blown series. I mean, where did we just see what did? Oh, he was at the SNL thing. That
Yeah.
killed me when Jerry and Larry was sitting next to each other, I think, and Elaine was like a row ahead of them, and I'm like, give me something with them, but nothing happened. So
I haven't finished the SNL reunion yet, but from what I've seen like so far, I thought I thought it was good. I thought that it was weird that like they still kind of, you know, kept it to, there were references to like current events, and I was thinking it's like, oh, this is like SNL 50 is a moment in time. Like this is something that you could probably like replay for years, and it's like that joke's not going to hit like in 2 weeks when like the iteration of the news cycle takes shape. And so I just wish that they would have thought more about like, oh, like let's just make this about SNL and its history, and let touch for 1 week. Don't touch really current events, because it's going to be time. You know, the shelf life is done in 2 weeks.
I think they were in a tough spot in that because they've been on for 50 years. They sort of had a lot of audiences to cater to. I mean,
Yeah.
you have to, if you're doing a 50th anniversary special, you have to at some point acknowledge, pay tribute to the original cast that got the show going. Then you have the people in my age group who want to see Dana Carvey, Mike Myers, Adam
Farley.
Sandler. Well, you can't see him, Chris.
Oh, I thought you meant, but like previous
Yeah.
clips clips and all that
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, Norm Macdonald and
Yeah.
and Phil Hartman. There's been so many who've passed away. So you got to cater to that audience. But then like you're still trying to bring in someone from today who's a little younger. That's why they're like Sabrina Carpenter all over
And Domingo,
that thing.
yeah.
And Domingo, which is funny. That guy is actually really funny.
I love Marcelo
Hernandez.
Hernandez. Like,
Very
yeah,
funny,
and
very
especially
funny.
as like a Latino, like he just hits. He hits my. And I've seen just sort of when he came up on my TikTok algorithm one day, like I was just in deep of just like, oh, like all his jokes I can relate to.
Yeah, he was funny. So he's a funny guy. And the character and the guy who portrays him. So
Yeah.
they're in a tough spot because it's hard to satisfy all those crowds who are watching for different reasons and different people. And I thought it was good for what they had to do. Now, let me just tell the people too. One of the things we bonded over when we worked together was we were both Yankee fans.
Yeah.
Now, oh yeah, there you go, Yankee mug for those watching on YouTube or not watching on YouTube. Now, the two things happened this week with the facial hair and the New York that I have not weighed in on that I've got to just say a couple of things about. The thing with the facial hair infuriated me beyond belief because I don't understand why the Yankees would put out a press release and then have a press conference over something so frivolous, stupid, and unimportant. I don't understand why they didn't just say tell the players you could grow the facial hair. And if a player grew facial hair and a reporter said something, they'd be like, oh, we're allowed to now. And it wouldn't have been this whole thing. The Yankee facial hair thing somehow got like a 48-hour news cycle, and it was so embarrassing. It's so meaningless. It has nothing to do with wins or losses, how someone plays. I understand there's a little bit of an angle. They tried to say like, oh, free agents don't want to come here because they can't grow a beard. Well, that person's deranged if they're turning down money because they can't grow a beard.
Think about Johnny Damon. Like Johnny Damon, there was a whole thing, and Randy Johnson, like having to get the haircut and the beard before their press conference. And
right.
I don't know. I think it was just as Yankee fans, like we are so in deep with our tradition that like that's why it took on this whole bigger thing.
Yeah, but again, we're talking about facial hair. Like we've got to calm down. A press release and a press conference, and people are like, what would your father think of you changing the rule? His father would be 100 years old. What is he like? Facial hair is not like
his father probably would have been in the cabinet or something like that at this point. Yeah.
Right. So it was just such an embarrassing look for the organization that they're holding a press conference. The owner of the team is there. Like, what are we doing?
And
the worst thing of all,
like loose right now, just sort of like the definition of stubble and like all that kind of stuff. Like it's not.
It's embarrassing. It's so embarrassing. The worst thing was with Mattingly. You're too young to remember it, but they made Mattingly cut his hair because his hair was long, and then he like got suspended for a game because it was. I mean, that it should have been changed back then. Like the fact that it lasted till now is so pathetic. But then they change it, and then they made such a big deal out of something so dumb. It pissed me off.
All in all, like I really feel like it doesn't take any effect on the actual play. But then when I just look at our roster over the years, there isn't really anyone who I feel like we've lost out on because they didn't want to come to the team because of a mustache or anything like that. Most of our stars have been clean shaven just in general. Like a Jeter never rocked anything.
Right.
A-Rod had a little, 5 o'clock shadow scruff from time to time, but that was about it. Like
Brian Cashman said in recent years, for the free agents or their agents would ask about the facial hair thing. So, okay. But this is what, this is why I think it makes the Yankees look bad. The first time anyone brought it up in terms of like, you're trying to sign a free agent, you should have changed the rule. But they didn't. And then the other thing is, they're not going to play New York anymore after a loss. That is the correct move. That is the news we should be focused on. It should only be played after a win. That had to be changed. That's a good job.
I agree. It was always weird walking out of the stadium after a loss and like it was playing. I'm trying to think of like what would be a really fun song to hear on the way out.
You just can't play the same song after a win and a loss. They have to be different.
It's like "Luck Be a Lady" or something like that.
They're going to do "That's Life" is good when they lose now. Yeah, that's good. Keep the Frank's theme going. Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else from the world of sports, but there's nothing going on right now, so there really is nothing else to discuss in the world of
No, it's
sports.
been a boring time in sports.
Are the Yankees your favorite team in team
Yes.
sports? Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
So
I made
you're
it a
looking
point to
forward to
go
the
to a
season?
couple World Series. Yeah, I mean, I think I went to a World Series game last year. Did I? No, I did not. But I did go to the playoff rounds before that.
Right.
I'm looking forward to the season. Like, obviously, losing Soto sucks, but at the same time, like, I think the team did spend money, made some trades that, all in all, if you try and cancel out like what one guy hitting 40 home runs versus two guys who can hit 25 means, like, it kind of equals out. I hope. I think our pitching staff has gotten so much better, and so yeah, I'm optimistic about the upcoming season. But at the end of the day, it's like the Dodgers bolstered up even more, and so it's like we can make it all the way back to the World Series, but then that's where the tall order of trying to beat LA is pretty hard, I think, right now. But no, I'm excited.
Yeah, I like that there's a lot of new faces, so I'm excited too. I'm gonna get into it. All right, I'm gonna throw some topics at you. Let's just see what happens here. Are
All
you
right.
in it? Are you into the Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni thing? Because this is what I said on Twitter a couple weeks ago. Obviously, Twitter is based on who you follow. Now, I follow a lot of entertainment sites, like I follow the Hollywood Reporter and the Wrap and People and Entertainment Weekly, whatever. So every day, all day, my feed is like all these tweets about Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, but I don't know what's going on. Like, I know she sued him for sexual harassment. He countered, and then whatever his counter was has sort of blown her out of the water. And he's proven like this, and he's posting. And like, it seems like something I would be so into, but I can't follow it because there's just always something going on with it.
Can I tell you? Same thing for
Yes.
me. Like,
Okay,
it
good.
was at the beginning, the lawsuit in the New York Times article, and there was a daily episode, and I was like, okay, like, this is fascinating, and I'm in. Then I guess the voicemail recordings got out, and then, like, I don't know, like, there's internet sleuths out there trying to piece together. It's like, well, actually, like, Justin Baldoni's releasing all this footage of in his defense, and now it's lost me. Like, it's gotten so deep that, like, I honestly don't know who's at fault here or who's the bad person. Somehow, I feel like Ryan Reynolds got thrown into the whole thing, and
Oh yeah,
Taylor
and then
Swift
Taylor
at some
Swift got
point.
thrown in. Yeah.
Colleen
Taylor Swift got
Hoover,
thrown
the
in too.
author of the book, like, unfollowing Blake Lively and then, kind of like not backing her anymore. I'm lost.
There's a lot going on.
an explainer. I need like a chart with just lines that connect everything. Yeah. It'll make for a sick Netflix documentary down the road.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like if we were in the office together, you'd be explaining a lot of this case to me, or at least maybe we would maybe follow it together. But
Yeah,
we're out of it. All right. The Academy Awards are this Sunday. Will you watch at all?
I don't know. Like, I'm so in and out of like, I go through years where I'm like, oh, like, they released like 4 or 5 movies that, like, I saw, and like I can follow, which ones were the really good ones. And this year, I don't feel like I've seen it. Like, I get so lazy sometimes that, like, I have a list on my phone. I was like, I got to watch Anora. Like, everyone's talking, how this is such a great movie. I still haven't seen it, and it's been on my list for months.
Okay. So funny thing. Can I just say a funny thing here? So on Monday, I was listening to Chris Mad Dog Russo, as I do every day on SiriusXM, and he's been on this kick because he loves Bob Dylan, so he loved The Complete Unknown, and he loved Timothée Chalamet, and he went to the premiere, and he met Timothée Chalamet, and then he said on Monday, he's like, and he was talking about like Chalamet winning the Oscar, and he brought up Anora, and he's like, by the way, I guess someone he knows told him Anora was great, and he's got to watch it. And he ripped it to shreds, and he was like, and the bad language. He goes, "Do we need the bad language throughout the whole movie?" Like Chris Russo's anti-cursing, which I find fascinating. So I had no idea what this movie was, never heard of it, Googled it. So it's about a stripper or something, and I'm like, well, now I know why Dog didn't like it because that's not his thing. So it's funny you brought that movie up because he was saying the language was terrible. And do I need to see a stripper with an oligarchy? And I'm like, yeah, that is not a Chris Russo movie. But I was intrigued. Now I have some interest in maybe watching it.
So I mean, I haven't seen that one. I haven't seen Amelia Perez, which apparently is like
Yeah, I haven't
good,
seen it.
but like, or the critics say is good, but then like the general public, is out on it. The cast is pretty strong. Um, to your point, like I feel like the Mad Dog entering sort of like the campaign for Timothy Chalamet and A
Yeah.
Complete Unknown has been just fascinating to watch. The whole trip to Europe to go and to the premiere and meeting him, I thought that was awesome. I mean, I think you should try and get him for the next week after the Oscars for a reaction,
It's a
no
good
matter
idea.
if it either he's really happy and over the moon that A Complete Unknown wins, or you're gonna get the rant of
Yeah, pretty much.
Timothy Chalamet getting snubbed. Chalamet's just a fantastic actor in general. I mean, you can't, and I don't know, just like the press that he's done around the whole thing, has been really cool. I still haven't seen the movie, so like,
So I'm looking now. These are the best picture
okay,
nominees: Amelia Perez, A Complete Unknown; Conclave; Nickel Boys, which I've never heard of; I'm Still Here, which I've never heard of; The Substance, which I've never heard of; Dune Part Two; Wicked; Honora; and The Brutalist. I've not seen one of those movies.
only one I've seen, Wicked,
Yep.
and I loved it, and I would probably go see that again and know that like, oh, I'm about to spend 2 hours and 45 minutes of my time watching this movie instead of going to watch A Complete Unknown for the first time or Nora for the first time. Wicked is just like a blast. Like I don't know if it's gonna win, but it was so good. You know me, I'm a musical theater guy.
Well, there's two things here. I don't know what it is about this train of thought segment, but there's something about this segment in Wicked because Sal said he blew off, I think it was the college football championship game and watched Wicked instead that night, and he loved it. So he loved Wicked, and you loved Wicked. You couldn't pay me to watch Wicked, and then here's my thing: A Complete Unknown is a film like I would totally be into if I liked who it was about. Like I love the Elton John movie, I love the Queen movie, but I excuse me, I can't stand Bob Dylan's music or his voice. It's like so I can't. So I have no interest in the movie. I can't be one of those people that like, oh well, the artist and watch it for the appreciation. Like I hate his music, so if I watch the movie, I would be bored out of my mind.
Yeah,
Narrow
I'm
view, I
not
know, but
I'm not a Bob Dylan guy either. And so I run into that issue too. It's sort of like if I watch the movie, do I leave there all of a sudden on a Bob Dylan high and trying to learn all the songs and
yeah,
become this retroactive fan? But I am looking forward to who's it? Jeremy Allen Hill is playing Bruce Springsteen in
Jeremy
that
Allen
movie.
White from The Bear.
Jeremy
Yeah,
Aaron
Jeremy
White,
Allen.
yes.
Yeah, from The Bear. Yes, I agree. I will watch that. I will go see because I'm not a Springsteen fan at all, but I can tolerate him way more than Bob Dylan. And
Yeah.
I would like to see Jeremy Allen White there because I love The Bear.
I haven't watched The Bear. I watched the first season, first couple episodes, and then I kind of fell off. But
Oh, I'm a big Bear fan.
I need to binge that at some point. I'm behind on that. I'm behind on Severance. I haven't really gotten into it yet. I heard that's
Lot
the
of
show
talk
that
about
everyone's
Severance.
supposed.
Yeah.
I feel like right now I'm a White Lotus, like week to week, and
Yep.
that leads me to Reddit and conspiracy theories and all that kind of stuff. And I like a show like that, but I'm behind on Severance. Behind on I never even finished Succession.
What?
So there's these big
That's
shows that like
embarrassing. See,
that I've
that I
never
would
really
not let
caught to
you.
see into the end.
I would not let you get away with that if we were in the office together. You gotta finish Succession. That's
Now,
a
were you
bad
week
job
to
by
week
you.
with that show?
Yes, you have to be
Okay.
because I don't want to get the spoil. I would watch it live Sunday nights live. That's how I would watch it. I'm old. That's still how I like to watch like a buzzworthy show. So,
And you haven't
all
gotten
right.
into White Lotus, or you have?
No, I haven't gotten into White Lotus. I know it's supposed to
Oh
be
man,
good. I know. That's on me.
yeah.
All right, Chavez, I appreciate you doing this. I know you're a busy man with the Citius Mag empire. Now, didn't you just like break your own like personal record or something? You did something in the track world that was good, right? Brag to the people before you get off this
Oh my
podcast.
God. This isn't like anything to brag about. I broke 5 minutes for the mile. High school kids and middle school kids do this nowadays, but like I
Oh,
wasn't
really?
like a star, I wasn't a distance runner in high school. And so I wasn't any good. And kind of over time, it was this joke where I would try to break 5 minutes for a mile and then just fall short and fail and fail and fail and fail. And then, over the last couple of months, I really got into the training, dedicated myself, and
I
finally
think
got
being
to do
modest,
it.
I'm sure doing a mile under 5 minutes is a big deal, and you're trying to downplay it. But the listeners will let me know. Is it a big deal if he did a mile under 5 minutes?
I guess like the thing that ties it all together is like 4 years ago or something like that, I raced Malcolm Gladwell in the mile, and he kicked my ass. Like, he was 57 years old, I was 27,
Well, that's
and
pathetic.
he ran 5:13 for like a 57-year-old. Men's Health did like this whole article about like how crazy the performance was by him and how he smoked me. And so ever since then, like, I've had my demons with the mile. And I finally conquered it last weekend. So no, all is going well right now. So
Good.
yeah.
All right. So tell people Citius Mag podcast, and
Yeah.
and your socials. What are the socials?
Yeah, Citius Mag on Instagram, on Threads, on Blue Sky, wherever people are. The Twitter, like we're everywhere.
What is your personal Twitter and Instagram?
My personal Twitter is at Chris Chavez. My Instagram is Chris_J_Chavez. Can't snag that one.
That's
from
a terrible
at
name.
Chris Chavez.
Yeah,
it's really hard.
Who is the real Chris Chavez on Instagram? Who's got that name?
I think some account that really hasn't posted much. I DM'd them as willing to pay for the handle, and no response.
How much would you pay for it? How much would you pay for it? How important is it for you?
I think I'd go up to $500 for the Instagram handle. Yeah.
God.
So
I would take $500 for my
someone out there could help me get that one. Yeah. Just let me know. Yeah.
All right, Chris, appreciate it, and be well. You're the best.
Always a pleasure, Jimmy.
All right, take it easy. All right, my many thanks to Jay Bilas. He was outstanding. Love those Larry David stories. Love those Bill Raftery stories. My thanks to Chris Chavez for filling in for Salicata. Sal's back next week. And my thanks, of course, to you for listening. If you missed any recent episodes of SI Media with Jimmy Traina, go catch up now into the archives, Apple, Spotify, YouTube. They're all there. Andrew Marchand from The Athletic was on last week. Dan Rappaport from Dan on Golf and Scratch was on 2 weeks ago. Make sure you subscribe to SI Media with Jimmy Traina, rate and review as well. All right, that wraps it up. We'll see you next week. Stay safe and take care.